All right. Well, we wanted to get together today to talk about the annual report that's obviously coming up. We appreciate everyone's hard work getting that information in. I know that it takes a lot of time and effort to compile that information, so we definitely appreciate that. We're going to go through today and just kind of go over the reason for the annual report and ways to utilize it and tools that we have available. So we'll go ahead and get started. So first off, we're going to have April. She's going to give us a little bit of an overview.
Afternoon, everyone. April Youngblood here. I just wanted to kind of recap what the America's SBDC annual report is and what it's for and why it was developed, as we have a lot of new members and professionals in our network that may not have that background. So the annual report is a national piece developed by the association that was actually started in 2019. The report always includes national impact information, which is collected from the Chrisman survey and SBA, and of course includes data and client stories from all of our 63 SBDC networks. The main purpose of the report is to highlight the work that SBDCs do. We start, of course, with the impressive economic impact. But what our stakeholders are looking for as they're discussing the program in DC is they're looking for the people piece. And so that's the stories of your clients and the work that you're actually doing in those 63 SBDC state and regions. And so that's where we pull together this incredible report. So some of the categories that are typically featured in the report that we ask you to submit on, those categories are pulled from conversations that we have with SBA or some of our stakeholders in DC of things that they're looking for you to highlight. And so that's kind of how the categories come together. They sometimes shift and change, but those are sort of the areas we'd like to focus in on. And so obviously the report is something that is shared beyond our stakeholders. It's for everyone to consume and read. It's a beautiful piece of marketing communication. For those of you that have been with us since 2019, you know that it actually started as a printed piece. It was kind of like a catalog. But then during the pandemic years, we had to pivot and move it to a virtual option, which actually allowed us to provide a lot more functionality and do more and tell more. And so you can actually use the report to search for specific stories. You can go in and kind of do a deeper dive into some of the subject matter. So that's really helpful. And we've had a lot of support from our marketing committee over the past few years in helping us find other ways to share the report beyond with our legislative outreach. And so you'll see things like the editorial calendar that we've developed with the committee over the years that will help you distribute that information. And so we are aware, of course, that the networks create their own annual report materials, but for the state and region. But this really sort of brings everyone together under one brand, under the network as an umbrella, so we can really show the amazing work that you all do. And that's it. Thank you.
All right, now we're going to move on to Sonya Smith. She is obviously going to talk to us about the legislative strategy side and different best practices that she has to share with you.
Hi, Melissa, and thank you. Melissa, you may have to advance the slide since I'm having technical difficulties, so thank you for bearing with me.
Yeah, you're good.
For some reason, my computer does not like the registration links, but good afternoon, everyone. And so I'm excited to be a part of this with April, Melissa, and Sherry. So I don't want to be redundant to some of the things that April mentioned, as well as what Sherry will talk about specifically in her expertise and background on being the committee chair, but also what she has done in her role in Missouri. And so I'll be focused specifically as the co-chair for the legislative committee. JD Collins, also from Michigan, the state director that has come on board and is also the other co-chair for the legislative committee. And we're working closely with T-Row and his team to really look at the aspects of our legislative strategy and how to really push forward our federal legislators and stakeholders to understand the importance of the SBDC. And so on the first slide, it's really, I won't be, of course, you guys can read and see the information, is really looking at how to use your data to drive the conversation. So April mentioned a lot of the information that is has gone to the website for the members page, but also some information that her and Melissa will be sharing during our visits with state directors and associate state directors in DC. They've made these information bite-sized, very colorful, very visual, that will hopefully give you that concise documentation and information you will need about um, the national data and impact surveys that are being responded to by your clients, the impact that we have versus, or I say as a collective from all of the resource partners. So SBDC, SCORE, Women's Business Centers, and VBOX, Veteran Business Outreach Centers. We do a high percentage of the impact from all of our resource partners. So really looking at the data and driving that conversation on how not only are all of the resource partners important, but how us as an SBDC and a unified organization and brand across the nation have contributed a majority of those of the impact data. And so T-Row has a white paper out. I know he revised some of that information to make it more up to date. The information on the slide is from 2023. So it's about 92% of the impact that we do is from SBDC of the 4 resource partners. And I think that's important as we talk to our legislators about what we do, not only in their districts and their states, but across the nation, on how we are an accredited body that really focuses on job creation, business starts, sales, all of that impact that really is important to the economic development and drive in the in your communities. Let me go to make sure. You can go to the next slide then. Melissa, thank you. Oh, I think we skipped one. Or maybe not. Well, on my slide, there is there, I did do like a screen or I put together some information. So if you go on www.sbdcimpact.org results, you will see on the ASBDC website, it's the economic impact results. Those will be, as I mentioned, highlighted and updated by Melissa and April. You will have that information on the federal and kind of state revenue costs and revenue generated information, but also just the economic impact results across the nation. The other key point of the data that drives the conversation is looking at policy changes or program outcomes, some key areas on what we'll be focusing on, especially in the future as the business environment changes. From your states, what you can do to connect that federal policy or the federal priorities that also are highlighted in your state. So whether it's manufacturing, government procurement, disaster and resiliency has been a big thing, cyber and AI, as we have launched AIU. So what are those federal policies and regulations coming from T-Row and his team or the legislative committee that you can also align and share stories and impact data from your specific state and district. And also that data holds us to the accountability and transparency. We have the confidentiality and privacy clause with our clients, but also the credibility to our policyholders because they are affirmed goals by our clients and stakeholders. So as I mentioned, we're one of the few accredited bodies of economic development resources, but we also have our impact data affirmed and confirmed by our clients. So that's also important that it's not secondary or extrapolated, projected type of data. And then you can use the client support and referrals as well as public hearings and open forums led by legislators can be, you can use our information for those types of activities. Next slide, please. Quantifying your economic impact. So the investment from your state and local private organizations, especially your host institutions, how we leverage federal dollars, or how we use our state or local dollars to leverage those federal dollars is important. Some states actually have more of the federal, local, or private funds than they do federal funds. So that shows that in return of investment, not only by the impact from your clients and the data, but also showing to your legislators and the stakeholders that the costs and the revenue generated and the tax revenue generated by investing in our program. So the ROI is really important to show not only the impact data, but also the revenue, jobs, and businesses launch, as I mentioned earlier. And then the other key area, not only just program development, but strengthening the conversation about working with all types of businesses. So from rural to urban areas, and really identifying the communities based on the member that you're meeting with. We are a public organization open to the public, so we work with all types of businesses or business owners. And I think it's important, especially looking at the committees or subcommittees that your members are on, what's important to them, whether it's veteran, minority, woman-owned businesses, procurement, export, and really speaking to those priorities when you're meeting with them. And then the other part of that is looking at comparative data year to year. April mentioned the Christmas study. You might have some statewide or regional studies that you have or data. The great part about most of our platforms is that we can show the life cycle or the life of a business working with the SBDC from one of, whether you use Center IC, Neosera, Salesforce, the longevity of a long-term client. And I think that's great because you can show that year-over-year success or when a client has returned to the SBDC for additional assistance. And in general, this reinforces the relationship, how I mentioned, a longstanding organization and partner to a lot of those in the community at all different levels. The other key aspect, next slide, please. Integrating the national and local narratives is another strategy. So what are the techniques of creating compelling presentations? And Sherry will probably go into more depth about this. I talked about visually engaging elements, so that can be infographics, charts, success stories, of course, powerful information or success stories in different ways, as I mentioned on a couple of slides before, of highlighting different committees or subcommittees that your members are on, or just in general, their own personal interests. Two specific things that I wanted to address, client videos and testimonials are a really great way to highlight something short to to grab their attention, because you have very short meetings when you're meeting with either a staff or a member. So something that's going to grab their attention and then ask for a follow-up and send more information. Congresswoman Velasquez is the ranking member on the House Small Business Committee. She loves the Venezuelan restaurant. That also happens to be one of our clients. And so when they opened up a new location, we purposely asked them to host at their new location a launch of one of our satellite expansion offices, as well as a resource partner event. And as you can see from the blog post, we invited her. That was a follow-up meeting from my meetings in DC about the expansion into Brooklyn, which is her district. And then we kind of tied it together because we know she's a really great customer and patron of that restaurant. So she was wanting to be there to support their second location. So things of that nature that you know about your members, just to be able to tie that into the real life client story and emotional connection. And then another example, we have a former Congressman, Molinaro. He's no longer with on the congressional side, but we had a statewide disability program for entrepreneurs, and he has his own personal and familial connection. So we also provided him with information about that program, and he always came out to support our entrepreneurs for our with disability statewide program and look for ways to help with additional funding. Next slide. So, bridging the national trends or the national information from ASBDC with your local stories is really to look at ways to showcase, highlight, use, and emphasize, and end with a clear call of action. So, as I mentioned before, looking at the broader trends, policies, and priorities from the federal government, especially, as, of course, SBA, and making the data more relatable and actionable for your members. Strategic storytelling. That's the one last thing. As I mentioned, focus on the human impact behind your numbers. This is a page from the ASBDC website. As I mentioned, a lot of materials are there for the members to pull. A lot of it is coming from the networks that you have submitted. So it's a great way to go back and see what you've highlighted and then demonstrating that tangible progress from your network. And this is some of the materials that that Sherry's client, some of the materials I mentioned on the human side to economic growth. This client received a procurement opportunity by working with our government procurement specialists to receive a government grant. She went through our bid match program and received a $79 million procurement opportunity and bid. And she won the government contract, and that was one of the first in getting into DoD. And so this is something that we pulled together and also submitted to ASBDC, and just to show how this is some of the information on their site. And last but not least, connecting the dots and using materials to get results. The main thing is follow up after your DC meetings in the district through newsletters, social media, events, quarterly meetings that you schedule with staffers, specifically making sure the staffers are your best friends when you're in the district, and just reconnecting with your members. And that way you're able to have them and gain stakeholders and partners for your program. That's it, Melissa. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. All right, next up we have Sherry from she's gonna touch base on the marketing strategy and best practices.
Thank you, Melissa, and thank you, April and Sonya. It has been it's been a good time getting ready for this presentation to share and to specifically look at the annual report and provide some strategies and best practices for using the annual report. And so I really appreciate, Sonya, the work that you've done with the legislative committee to help support T and April and all that the association does on the political side of supporting our national SBDC networks. And so I'm going to just talk through some of those strategies and best practices, having the annual report available to us and all the work that has been done by the association and T and April and the legislative committee, and then really where our responsibility comes in as SBDCs committed to the support at the federal level to continue the program. As Sonya highlighted, that 92% of the impact that SBA sees from the programs comes from SBDCs. So this is an opportunity for us to take what's been created and complement what we're doing within our networks and maybe utilize it within those marketing strategies and communication strategies to keep the SBDC program top of mind and to continue to foster relationships within our own state and regions as well. So first, I want to talk about leveraging the national report in your own marketing. one thing that I wanted to highlight is your network URL. So if you're not aware, the SBDCimpact.org site that Sonya referred to already, we each have our own network SBDC page, a part of that site. And so you can actually use that and direct people directly to your SBDC network's results that are included in the national report. We utilize this just to complement a lot of what we do on a regular basis here in our network. I incorporate it into our own annual report because it serves as another source of SBDC impact and information that supports what we're saying in our annual report, but also shows the impact that the national SBDC program has throughout the country. And it's a great way to highlight sections of the report as well. You can actually go and find the section on women-owned business or minority-owned business or any of those topics and highlight those specifically as well, which is a great way to repurpose information and stories and impacts that are out there already. Again, to complement what you're already doing within your marketing and communications. And it serves as that as another source that you're not necessarily having to maintain and update. We make sure we get that information in annually, and Melissa and April and the association make sure that it stays up and looks nice all year long. We can leverage the impact data within the national report. So depending upon your strategy and how you choose to market and communicate the impact data that you have within your own network, this can, again, a lot of this is serving as a complement to what we do within our own networks and how we communicate our successes. And so we get to showcase and highlight the impacts that we have, and then utilize the national report again as a complement to the work that is being done across the nation for support of the national network. This can come in handy when you're talking to legislators or staffers. One thing that we've experienced here in our state is, of course, there's changeover at the representatives or senator level, and staffers change as well. But we've seen staffers leave Missouri, but then they've also come back to Missouri as well when under a different senator or a different representative. And providing this information, it provides them a good basis of the SBDC program as a whole. So that way we're continuing to inform and educate advocates across the board, regardless of who they may be serving in DC or within our own state, for our state-based folks. Also, this serves as a great way to highlight achievements. I am a firm believer, and I know a lot of the other marketing communications folks across our SBDCs are firm believers in repurposing material and information. As we know, it usually takes more than 5, 6, 7 times sometimes for folks to see something and remember it or hold on to it. And so when you already have the information available, this provides you with opportunities to maybe be saying the same or similar things, but referencing a different resource to say those things. And so using the national report to share client or network highlights, or just use it as another source to promote what your network does. We all know that America's SBDC is our national association, but not everybody who is familiar with our state or regional SBDC programs has that intimate knowledge of who is what and how we're all connected. And so when they see our highlights and our achievements being recognized by another party that is not, our own SBDC, sometimes folks take they'll stop and they'll maybe take a few more minutes to take a look at that and read it. So it's just another way it comes in as another source telling folks about the great stuff that are going on within your SBDC and within the SBDC nationally. Next slide, please, Melissa. So the national report the great thing about it being digital is, it's easily accessible across the board. When we had the printed versions, they were wonderful and they were really weighty, and added some poundage to my suitcase when I was coming home from the winter meeting. But I would take some, but then that's all that I would have. So if I wanted to share with um, our hosts or where our centers, there were only so many copies that I could have in hand, legitimately, and bring back with me to the state. And so a huge opportunity that we have with the national report being online is, that we can use it, and then we can use it and target different audiences. So we have our audiences of our small business owners, entrepreneurs, whether they're clients or not. We have our stakeholders, we have policymakers, partner organizations, and we can use that same information and content that's on the report, but we can speak to it a little bit differently to get folks there to, again, see the highlights and see the achievements of what we've done. And as well, if they're interested, they may be poking around a little bit more about what the national network does. Um, I did include in here in one of my bullet points for target tailoring our messaging, using AI prompts, to help you create that targeted messaging for these various audiences can be helpful for you if you're not already doing that, and haven't kind of dabbled in that. So that's a great opportunity for us to make sure that we're tailoring those messages, and targeting those different groups, which you can adjust based upon the types of communication, whether it be social media, newsletters, digital reports, website content, whatever that may be. Sonya alluded to this and mentioned this as well, but visuals, so creating branded and engaging visuals to show the impact, and our success stories and our highlights is really important. Again, you can easily adjust those visuals to stay on brand, but if you have a little bit of a different look for your legislative outreach versus your small business owner entrepreneurship outreach, you can create those engaging graphics, those infographics of engaging data and information. And then just a point, tools like Canva can really help you make that user friendly and maintain consistency and quality as well. So again, you're kind of you're keeping the information the same. So we're still leading people to the national report, but we're doing it in a few different ways, or bringing people in from a few different channels. And then when we're targeting our different audiences overall and in general, of course, having an outline of who you want to engage with and the ways you want to engage, are really helpful. So, the way that I see the annual report, as I mentioned in the first slide, is this is a complement to things that we're already doing in our network. So, in our overall plan, this is just being weaved in, and it's serving as content that I can reuse, content that may appear fresh to others, even though, I know that the report gets published in February, but, if I want to highlight something because it aligns with a monthly celebration, or something that we've got going on in the state, say in August, I can reuse that information, and I can also use it to maybe highlight and target some legislative outreach, as we do have the DC meeting, but then that outreach continues and that communication continues, however you have that set up. But incorporating the national report into that overall marketing communication plan helps to, one, keep the annual report top of mind, even for ourselves. We know it's here. We know that there's a lot of time and effort put into it, but incorporating it into the plan keeps it top of mind for us. And then again, it allows for that repurposing of content, so that way we can be showing off what we're doing. Next slide, please, Melissa. All right. And then I've kind of been already alluding to this throughout what I've shared so far, but multi-channel narrative integration. So again, using the national report, we can incorporate it into a lot of different areas. Social media, of course, is the easy one that there's always stuff. We're always looking for content to curate across platforms. So we can always be looking for those opportunities. There's a link to the editorial calendar, which the 2025 editorial calendar is available. And like we've been doing for the last couple of years, we've continued to highlight different sections of the national annual report to, again, create content. Because when we're talking social media, we're always looking for content we can curate, but also, looking for those opportunities to align with a monthly celebration, a state holiday, or something along those lines. Social media, of course, is big. Again, that's a wonderful place to share that unique network URL, because you can be updating that. You can be popping that in a post if you just need a tweet or something to go out here or there. You can be incorporating that and leading people to what you want them to focus on your page. Press releases, so more of our traditional media opportunities. So you can incorporate the national report to announce, your network's inclusion in the national report. Hey, America's SBDC has put out their national report for this year. Here's our state or our region's SBDC impact and information. You can use it to highlight a client success story. Again, it's a different entity than your own network that's putting the information out. And so that may grab someone's attention from local media, radio, TV, newspaper, to be like, oh, this local client has been highlighted in this national report. That's amazing. We want to do a highlight on that. And, maybe hopefully they're coming through your SBDC to get that information and to be part of the story. And then, again, using AI, press release titles are, whenever I'm putting those together, they're not always fun. Trying to pack a big punch into a little bit of space. And so, again, using AI to help with those titles. And then local media, this just kind of couples on top of press releases specifically, but working with your local center, where they may have that client highlight, and helping them leverage how they can use the national annual report to promote their clients' inclusion in the national report, and what that might be able to do for them at the local level, but also for that client. And then I encourage all networks, like when we're talking in some of the different marketing groups and things, to create social media graphics, maybe some general content for local centers, depending upon how your social media is managed. Being able to provide a toolkit that's specific for your state, to encourage your team to be sharing the national annual report as part of their social media or newsletter. Planning is something that, with the work that Melissa and April do, I kind of bring that down and do a variation of that is aligned. And it's a pretty quick turnaround for me to do that, because I've already got the great examples set forth and the information that Melissa and April provide. And then too, always an opportunity to look on expanding local media relationships. Even if a story isn't run, you might capture the attention of a news reporter or someone from a radio talk show that will provide you opportunities going down the road. So those are just a few ways on how you can use the National Annual Report and the marketing piece throughout your own strategies to supplement and complement what you're doing.
Thank you, Sherry. Next up, we have the resources and next steps. So first off, here is everyone's contact information. Feel free to reach out. Obviously, everyone has a wealth of knowledge, and we appreciate you sharing your best practices with us today. Hopefully, this will help others to be able to move forward and be able to get their information out there. Toolkit access, we will slowly be adding that information to the web. So we will let you know. It'll definitely, everything will be up there by the end of January. We will include this video in that toolkit so that you can go back and get some of these great resources. I'll share the toolkit with you on the next slide. There are 2 webinars that'll be coming up hosted by T, one on January the 9th and one on January the 13th. So make sure to look out for those. They have been in the newsletter. You can register for those webinars. They are going to have a little bit deeper of a dive into the legislative outreach piece and ways to utilize that for the winter meeting and things that are coming ahead. Here are the toolkit items. We did work with the marketing committee to get impact and get their feedback to see the resources that they thought were most impactful, that they've used the most. So we've added a couple things and taken away a couple things, but this is just a kind of a rundown of all the different things. Like you were talking about, some Canva templates and PowerPoint templates and things like that to make it easier. We will have some promotional videos and social media graphics that can be used. We'll have a lot of plug and play things where you can put in your own local network pictures and things like that to, again, localize it as well. So there'll be a bunch of these resources available. Like I said, they will all be up by the end of January. We have gone through, already started reviewing all the annual reports, and we will be submitting anything that we need from state directors by the last week in January so that everybody can have one final look and check off and make sure that everything is the way that they want it to be done. So I appreciate everyone's time today. I hope that these resources will be helpful for you, and we will continue to reach out to you through newsletters and update you as we get more information and more changes. And hopefully we will get to see everyone at the winter meeting, and these resources will be very beneficial at that point. Thank you for all your time today.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, April. Have a good
Thank you,
one,
everyone.